Welcome back, Adventure Team, to another great episode of the Small Business Safari. And today we're going to go way off grid. Got a request from a listener who said, can we get somebody who's not just in home services? You guys seem to be so home services focused. I love it, but I'd like to hear somebody from another industry. And boy, have we done it. They said they wanted to hear restaurants. And did I bring somebody? I brought somebody
big.
Did
you ever? Yes, you did.
I did. Today we have Barry Lennon from here in Atlanta, who is an owner in 5 J. Christopher's breakfast and lunch places. We'll get into what that concept is, but has been around the block. He actually has done some remodeling, so I brought some home services in for that. He's Atlanta, born and raised, but definitely raised, right?
A little bit.
And then he's in Atlanta, and then he goes on to Georgia. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Champs twice. Hello. How about that? How's that feel?
Yeah, it's impressive. Just looking at his bio, I feel like I've walking back through time in my food history.
So he has a great food history, and we'll get into a lot of that stuff. But cheers, everybody, and let's welcome Barry Lennon, Atlanta restaurateur legend. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
All right, Barry, thanks for coming on. So I hit the highlights really quickly, but let's jump into some of the fun stuff. So when you came out of high school and you went to college, you said, you know what? I know the restaurant business is the hardest thing ever, and I'm going to go do that. That's what you decided?
Well, I started when I was 14 washing dishes for a local family here in Atlanta. But in college, there wasn't a hospitality major at the University of Georgia. There was party major. There was a lot of other things, but I was
They still have that major.
They still do. I think that's a minor.
That one.
Yeah. The party major?
Mm-hmm.
Causes you to stay there an extra quarter or two. But I after graduating, I was in the advertising field, and then just kind of wandered upon the restaurant business part-time at night. I started working at a local steakhouse here in Atlanta called Chops.
Yum.
And that kind of blossomed very quickly. So
what did you do at Chops?
Well, again, I was actually working for a construction. My brother was renovating big houses in Buckhead, and at night I was just sitting around doing nothing. I always had the passion to get into the restaurant business, own a bar. I wanted to be that guy. Originally, I wanted to be that guy that said, "Hey, buy my buddy a drink."
All right.
So I said, well, I probably have to own something to do that. So I started just getting my feet wet. I went to Chops and interviewed. And 2 weeks after I started, I was the MaitreD. So,
really?
And if you are at a big steakhouse like that, that's probably the best job to have, because anybody who wanted to get into Chops back in the early 90s, which was their heyday, they're still doing very well, had to go through me. So I had a free ticket to any concert in Atlanta, baseball games, football games, anything I wanted to do.
So you're a young man in your 20s with access to anything you want to do in the early 90s in Atlanta. And I like how he brings up football games, sporting events, but that's not what Atlanta was known for in the early 90s.
Tongue and Groove, orchestra pit, all the old bars. I never paid for a drink. I never paid for a drink going out. It was unbelievable.
So quickly, did you say, screw this construction thing, I'm going for restaurants? Because this is looking a lot easier.
for 3 years, I stayed working for my brother Monday through Friday, and then I worked at Chops 6 nights a week, just getting my feet wet, paying my dues. I made $7 an hour running the door at Chops.
Wow.
But I had a lot of other benefits.
What was the biggest tip you got to get a good table?
Don't eat yellow snow. No. Yeah, I'd get $100 every now and then, but I got to meet people like Barbara Mandrell, Tom Selleck. Remember Kent Merker, the pitcher for the Braves? Yeah. I always sat with his wife at any home game I want to. So Glavine, I got to go to World Series games. I got to do a lot of things.
So it was a taste into the open world. Did that start to feed what your vision of success looked like for you?
Exactly. At that point, I thought, this is what I want to do. I said, I've got to do this more full time. Pano, who owned Buckhead Life, had talked to me, and after 3 years at Chops, he moved the fish market from Lenox Mall over to Far Road, and I was part of the opening crew to open the Atlanta Fish Market, which at that point was $9 to $10 million a year revenue restaurant. It was nuts. That was one of the hardest years of my life.
And just because we're on 15 continents, we established that on one of our previous episodes.
We did.
For the listener, Chops is the quintessential clubby, expense account steakhouse. The fact that you were MaitreD in 3 weeks is crazy. And Atlanta Fish Market is the same thing for seafood. And I do want to ask you at some point, restaurants that last that long. I mean, it's just such a tough business. And I'd like to talk about why you think they fail so quickly, but what is it about places like that they just stay for decades?
Well, one of the things that I learned, and after I was at the fish market for a year, and then I opened my own steakhouse with a gentleman, Mike Kofer. He and I opened the Cabin on Buford Highway, had that from 95 to 2003. One of the things I had learned from working with Buckhead Life was food can be mediocre. Service has to be off the chain. If the service is good, people will come back. If the customer service is good, people will come back. If they feel like a regular, guess where they want to be? They want to be sitting in the middle of that room with everybody else getting treated like they're a regular, regardless of whether they are or not. So that's what I've always tried to do, is treat all my customers like regulars.
It's like the Cheers vibe, right?
Yeah,
everybody knows your name, that kind of thing.
Right. But it's also, that translates across all business. I said this before. I said it in my book too.
Oh, your book.
Oh, that's right.
We haven't mentioned it this episode yet.
Well, we're only 4 minutes into it. Why not? So for my book, From the Zoo to the Wild, but I said this in my book, and I actually had somebody contradict me and send an email to me saying, I said, I think the customer expects more about the customer experience than they do actually the quality of the outcome. And they're like, I don't agree with that. I said, they expect the hot water comes back on after you change out the water heater. They expect that your air conditioning cools you down when the air conditioners change. They expect your door to open and close. But if they don't have a great experience, they're not coming back. And I think that translates. And
they're going to nitpick everything too.
And they're going to nitpick everything.
Yeah.
But of course, Chops, of course, they had great food. And I think Panos and Paul's also built a great, I always thought it was a great reputation around food too. The food was good.
Well, that was their first baby.
Yeah.
So he and Paul, in fact, my parents took me their first year they were open for my 16th birthday, which kind of tells you a lot. But I remember it like it was yesterday and how great the food was and how phenomenal it was. But I remember back then, Pano was walking around the restaurant talking to tables, and he owns the place. And you're like, this is the bigwig.
That's funny because my last memory, I would say my most vivid memory of Chops was sitting down and having the bigwig of the day come up and say, hey, I just want to make sure everything's going all right. And you're like, oh yeah, this is good.
Kevin, it's like Mr. C over at Sugo does that.
Yeah, So I think that's a great point. You want to be a hands-off owner sometimes, but sometimes you got to go out there and press the flesh, and it makes that memory, it makes that experience, and that food tastes better because we all love a story with our food and our drinks, right?
Yeah. You're exactly right though. There are so many restaurants that actually make great food that they're gone in 6 months, 12 months.
It's the customer service.
All right, so let's go back to he was at the fish market. He was rolling, and then you started the cabin. You left them and started the cabin on your own.
A gentleman that he and I worked together at Chops. He was one of the managers when I was MaitreD, Mike Kofer. He and I were playing golf one day, and he said, "Hey, I'm out on my own, kind of looking. I'm starting to look." He was working for George Ippolito at the time, helping him. He had just left Chops, and he said, "I'm out looking at real estate. I'm thinking about doing my own thing." And I looked at him and I said, "If you don't want to do it by yourself, let me know." We went to dinner at Chops that night, he and his wife and the girl that I was dating at the time, and we did a handshake deal. And 7 months later, we opened the cabin.
Wow. So you left, went out on your own, took off, partnership, and you said you went 95 to 03.
95 to 03. 9 great years. The problem was when everybody asked me where it was, we got a great deal on the real estate. We didn't have a lot of money. We were just two young guys that didn't have a ton of money. We got a small investor who gave us some cash, and we were just off Lenox Road on Buford Highway. So for a steakhouse to be on Buford Highway,
right,
you had to know where you were going. You weren't going saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm not going to go to Poncho's. I'm going to go to the steakhouse instead."
So for reference, that's Buford Highway is known as being the international corridor, and not exactly. It's great food, but it's not exactly that fine dining experience that you have literally 2 miles, a mile away from there. So you were you had to be a destination for you guys to be found.
But the location was unbelievable. It was an old log cabin built in the early 20s. And so it had real log walls. And then the downstairs was all stacked stone. So like a day like today, when it's really windy and raining outside, dust would come through the holes in the wall because the mortar was that old and it it was just we had gas lanterns on the walls. It had so much character. The problem is, if I could have picked it up and moved it over to Roswell Road or in the middle of Buckhead, we probably would still be open today. We just kind of, after 9 years, it just had run its course. And 9 years is a long time in the restaurant business.
That's a
Usually
long
it's
time.
2. If
Yeah.
you can make it past 2, most people will tell you, I think like 80% of restaurants don't last 2 years.
All right. So you closed the cabin. And then what? Did you go work for somebody? Or at that point?
As I was telling my wife, I was doing some consulting work for a couple of months, which was I was looking for a job, trying to figure out what I was going to do.
So that's what you told her?
I
love that
she
one.
knew.
Oh,
No, Pano,
that's so
actually,
fun.
my phone rang one day, and I was actually helping these guys. I was helping the landlord, Joe Lockwood, rent the cabin. So he was going to forgive a month or two of rent if I would help him rent it. And I was sitting there, and my phone rang, and it was Pano. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing some consulting work." He said a word that I won't say over the air. And he said, "Come talk to me. I got something." So I went over there, and the whole drive over there, I said, "Please don't be the fish market. Please don't be the fish market." Because when that first year was open, it was really tough. So I sit down with him, and he looks at me and he goes, "I want you to come run the fish market." Like, no. So he did a lot of convincing. They had a chef that had been there, Bobby Holly, bless his soul, he passed away a year and a half ago, who had been at Le Bernardin and Brasserie Le Co's here in Atlanta, and just unbelievable trained chef. And Pano taught me to come back. It was a totally different experience. I was the GM there for 3 years, and we took business from 10 million the first year I was there to 13.5 the last year I was there.
So did you feel like you were going back and taking a step back from running your own place, or did you feel like this was
It was different.
It was a different vibe?
It was different because I think if I'd have stepped right into one of his other concepts, maybe like a Preachy that was a little bit less, didn't do as much sales, or Veni Vidi Vici at the time that was a smaller concept, I think it would have felt that way. But when you have 60 waiters on staff, 6 bartenders, you got 30 plus in the kitchen, it's just a totally different beast.
And his management style was pretty hands off. It was up to you to run it. And
no, you know what? I was very lucky. He's got both of his sons work in the business. I always felt like family. He always was extremely nice to me, and I saw him be very hard on a lot of other people. For him to let me come back once, I was normally, once you leave him, you're like dead to him.
Yeah.
But he was phenomenal. We met quite often, but I knew what I was doing, and I'd be in charge of the P&Ls with the staff and with the other managers, and each one of my managers had certain things to do. So it was kind of felt like the king there. It was kind of nice.
One of the things that it wasn't lost on me, you just said that, is that obviously you did not burn a bridge leaving one of the biggest restaurateurs in Atlanta at the time. I mean, this guy had, at one point, didn't he have 8, or maybe it was even more of that, 8 concepts going?
Right. He's closed several, but now he's opened 4 different concepts down in Florida.
Okay.
So Boca.
But he let you come back. So clearly you didn't burn a bridge when you said,
No.
"Hey man, I'm out of here. I'm going to go compete."
And the interesting thing is, I was at the fish market with my daughter last week, because we had a daddy-daughter day, and she wanted to go to the fish market for lunch. And we walked up into Pana's office, and I sat down and talked to him. So I left him twice, and I still think if for some reason something happened, I could go back. One of the things is Atlanta's a really big town. How many different restaurants are there in the metro Atlanta area? Thousands. But it's a small world when it comes to the high-end game, and it's a really small world when it comes to our knit group of people that we all trust.
Yeah.
And I still think he trusts me this day, which that's one of my greatest
I think-
accomplishments, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. I guess that translates anywhere. You go out there and start a business doesn't mean you got to piss off somebody or burn somebody off and kill that bridge and do whatever, because you never know. It might come all the way back.
We all help each other too. So the plumber that I use, and I've used for the 17 years I've been with Jay Christopher's, I got from Buckhead Life. And he is unbelievable. And he's one of those guys, as you said, customer service. He's one of those guys that I know I could call. If something happened right now, he would drop what he's doing and go to my house to fix something at my house.
Yeah, that's solid. So obviously you do a good job having people engender to you. Obviously, you're a likable guy. That's why we have you on here anyway, because
Well,
we need to raise the likability level
Well,
for our guests.
and he's
if you know
just
what I mean.
one of an endless string of people better looking with more hair.
I know.
I got lucky. My dad passed that on, and my grandfather, who was in the hospitality business, is really where I got my bug. So
restaurateurs have to be either just certifiably insane or just the biggest risk takers of all entrepreneurs. And this is an entrepreneurial podcast, and Chris has gone over the stats of business failure just in general. And in restaurants, it's that on steroids, and the margins are even thinner. I mean, what possesses you to just keep going back to this really challenging industry?
It's something about, I really love pleasing the guests. I really do. I love turning a situation around. I'm partners in 5 J. Christophers, but I answer every complaint for all 26 J. Christophers.
Really?
That's what I do.
Jeez.
And the J of J, there's a J and a Chris.
Yeah.
And it's J. Christophers. The J will, and he's told me, he goes, I'm amazed at how you can smooth somebody over. And I said, rarely is it that I can't take somebody and turn a bad situation into a good situation. Because all they want is, first thing they want recognition.
They want somebody
They
to
want
hear
a
them.
phone call. But in any kind of business, and you talked about that when we opened the show, it's all about, let me know that there's a problem. Communication, all acknowledgement. I call them and I say, I am so sorry that happened. I didn't say that we messed it up.
Yeah.
I don't, if it gets to the point, I do say, yes, I'm sorry we mismade that omelet or something like that. But most of the time it's, I'm sorry we did that to you.
Yeah.
We wasted your money. We wasted your day, but we're going to turn that around. Give me the opportunity to turn it around. We've already met with our staff. We've gone over what we've done wrong. Let me turn it around. That's what I love doing. Now, a lot of times my wife will look at me at the end of the day and say, I have no idea you do what you do, because I'd probably be in jail for slapping somebody or doing something because of the way people will talk to you. But after a couple minutes, I can usually calm them down. And I think that's one of the things and why I love doing it and why I've been doing it since I was 14 years old, which is like 7 years ago. So
yeah, that's solid that he can do that, because I might actually hire him to start taking care of mine. Although I'm on a pretty good run, touch wood, with our Google reviews. Just to take a quick aside, in 1 year, we've gone from 500 to 626 Google reviews, and we're able to raise the bar another point. You know how hard it is to do it when you have that many in there?
It's tough.
And these guys have done it, and it's really not me.
It's like lowering your handicap.
Yeah, it takes a lot of rounds of great golf, right? Yeah. And so that's great. But but when a complaint comes up, I'm definitely gonna call Barry. Hey, can you answer this one before I go take this person?
When we first moved
shoot
to
their size out?
to Atlanta, Jay Christophers was a godsend to us, because I moved from the West Coast, where it seems like there's a lot more independent breakfast places. And we moved to Georgia, and we're like, I think it's just Waffle House. I think that's all we have. And then all of a sudden we found Jay Christophers and the chocolate chip pancakes, and that was done. That was a once a week for a long time with my kids.
And we're lucky that we've kind of given, since we do have so many locations, but I think people still feel like each location is their neighborhood location, because they're not all designed the same. They don't all look the same. There's artwork. If you've been into one, there's artwork in each one of them, but it's all different. The colors are all different. The paintwork, everything's different. And I think we give that neighborhood feel, which is kind of nice. So we don't feel like a cookie cutter.
No, I would 100% agree with that.
All right, so let's go back. He was at the fish market again, back with a guy that he can sit in the room and still talk to, but yet he left him again, Alan. And so you left Panos again for what?
So I went up to Pano's office and I said, boss, and that's what I call him. I said, boss, I hate to do this, but I'm going to give you my notice. I didn't give him 2 weeks. I didn't give him a month. I gave him 4-month notice, because I knew that size of restaurant, but I'd already worked out with my new partner that if I get fired tomorrow, which I don't think I will, can I start? And he goes, absolutely. I said, but I want to give Pano the respect that he's given me by what he's taught me. So I gave notice in August and I left December 31st.
Okay.
End of August. And I was a little nervous because I thought that's a long time.
Yeah.
But I gave him till the end, and we still had a great relationship. Some people, they call it short timing it when they give their
Right.
notice. I
Absolutely.
didn't. I was hands-on. I was still in that restaurant. I never left early. I never showed up late because as you talked about before, Chris, I don't want to burn a bridge.
Yeah.
Because this is a small town and Pano and I are still friends and he knows a lot of people and he knows a lot more people than I do.
But I think that shows a lot of character. One of the things when I gave my notice, same thing when I was going to take the leap, I gave my notice on April 2nd. I didn't do it on April 1st because I didn't want him to think it was an April Fool's joke.
And did they tell you to clean out your desk?
I had all my boxes in my corner ready to go because I actually thought he was going to throw me out of my ear. And he looked at me and said, I finally got you in the right position and you're leaving now. You can't leave me now. This is quarterly reporting. We got the earnings call. We can't do this. He said, can you give me till the end of the month? I said, what? I thought for sure you're going to kick me out. And I did. So here's what I did. I started the business. I had everything all lined up. I thought for sure he was kicking me out. I didn't have any advertising going out. So I figured, okay, I got a chance. I said, okay, I'll stay till the end of the month. And I had forgotten that as a Catholic guy, one of the things I wanted to do to make sure my business was blessed and ready to rock and roll was that I was going to put my ad in the bulletin. And I forgot that my ad was going into the bulletin this Sunday. And I went to church and there it was in April. It was April 10 and it was in there. I was like, oh shit. and I saw that before church got started and I didn't hear a word. All I knew is I didn't have a phone. So even if people called me, I didn't even have a phone. So I took the family out, went to Best Buy, bought a phone, stuck it because I had the second outlet run to the office.
So you were trying to make a deal with God.
I was definitely dealing with God. Oh, the whole time, dude.
I will to the end. He saw right through that.
No, I'm doing it all the way to the end. By the way, I'm going to barter the whole way we go down, man. And I can promise you that that's coming down, and he knows that already. But anyway, so I do that, and I keep going. But my point coming back to it was on, we did the earnings call, and I think April 28th was my official last day. And you know what time I left? 7 p.m.
Well, it's a credit to both of you guys because in my time in corporate America, if we ever had somebody turn in their 2 weeks notice, it's like, I really appreciate that. And they were gone the next day because of what you said. Most people will just sort of half-ass it for those next 2 weeks and try to collect a check.
But that's why he can go sit up in Pano's office and kick it back and have dinner or have breakfast or lunch with his daughter and talk to the guy. That's a big lesson. I mean, you know what? Sometimes it may not feel good. You may want to give everybody the big finger and show them the way to the door, but it comes back, man. It just comes back to you. You gotta keep careful.
I said to Pano, he was sitting in his office that day, and I said, the only reason I'm leaving you is because this company is giving me ownership and giving me opportunity to have ownership in restaurants. And he looked at me and he said, bull. And I said, no, really. And I showed him the contract and he said, unbelievable. I said, boss, I'd stay with you if I could have ownership. But I knew that wasn't going to happen because he's got it's a family business.
Right, yeah.
Now he takes very good care of people and people stay with him a very long time. The GM of Chops right now, Kevin Brown, he was at Chops when I was at the fish market. He got promoted. In fact, it was between he and me leaving the fish market to take over Chops back in 2005. But Pano brought me up to his office and said, I just wanted to come to you first. I know you've been thinking about it, but I'm going to offer it to Kevin because he said, the problem is if I put you there, then I got to find somebody else to come here and run this beast. So I understood, but I said, boss, the only reason I'm leaving you.
You know, honestly, this is really smacking of Godfather to me. I mean, I'm just going right back to the Godfather movie. You know, I just see it.
You had to kiss his ring. I've kissed his ring several times.
But you're from the outside, Tom. You're from the outside.
That's right.
That's okay. I like it though.
But I felt like a Greek.
I
felt like a Greek. It's a Greek family, and I really felt like Pano treated me like a son. Always did, still does to this day. Is very, very nice to me and my family.
I swear, if I had his career, I'd be 700 pounds and my cholesterol would be off the charts.
Yeah,
I know. And so he walks in there and he's
fluctuated.
You look great. I would be Paul Prudhomme.
And I was like, I know. And I'm like, oh my God, he's skinnier than me. And I'm not even in the business. All I do is eat and drink.
You and I have known each other for a long time. I had gotten up there when our daughters were playing tennis together at St. Pius. So
all right, you told on yourself. I wasn't going to say that. But you're looking great, man. You're doing it all. So you go off to Jay Christopher. So now a brand new concept. So you were doing high end food concepts and doing dinners and lunch and dinner, but now you went to a breakfast lunch concept. Did you have to re-gear the way you were thinking?
changes
I
alarm
think
clock.
the hardest thing was when my wife.
That's probably the hardest thing you had to do right there.
The hardest thing was when my wife said to me, "Honey, I know you like to cook because on Sundays when I was my one really night off, I always cook. That's why I still to this day love to cook." And she
Just
said,
for the record, he's a great follow on social media. Barry Lennon on social media. If he probably won't accept your friend request, maybe he will. But I watch his food when he puts it out there. He loves his green egg and
Yeah.
he's cooking. And I sit there and go, "Oh my God, I should cook like that." And
Really?
I know you like it too. And we'll get
Yeah.
into cooking. Yeah,
So
he's a great. He is good.
But my wife said to me, she said, "There's going to be a problem. I'm not used because Jay Christopher's open from 7 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. Being an owner, I'm usually doing stuff until I get home 3:30, 4, but I'm still doing stuff on my computer, but I'm home." And my wife said to me, she said, right before I left Buckhead Life and started with Jay Christopher, she said, "I know you like to cook. The girls and I," and they were young at that point, "the girls and I have gotten used to eating a lot less for dinner. Some nights we'll just have cereal."
Oh
Or-
my God,
Because you were always gone.
Oh, I'm always,
and you that was probably news.
but
to you.
every
You were like,
night
oh
she-
hell no,
but-
that ain't happening anymore.
But since then, it's what do we have? What's for dinner? What are we having? And if I say, "Well, we're going to do breakfast tonight," she's like, "What? No, we got to cook something else." So that was one of the hardest things. Now, and honestly, getting up early in the morning because I was used to being for Buckhead Life. I'd get to work at 9 o'clock, so I'd get to drive the girls to school in the morning, and then I'd go to work. But I didn't get home until as GM. I got home at 8:30.
That's not bad.
But 17,
still. So you'd
18
leave
years
kinda right
ago,
after
my
the dinner
daughters were
rush?
young.
They were in
Back
bed.
then, they were in bed. So I didn't
Dude.
really get to see them.
Think about that for a minute.
So-
Ellen and I, again, corporate America. I was a road warrior for years and years before I came here to SunTrust. And I joke, but it's not really a joke. The first 3 years of my daughter's life, she didn't see me Monday through Friday. And that's why she learned to stay up till 11 o'clock at night on Sunday, because I try to keep her up as much as I could so I could see her. And when I finally got that in-town job, I'm like, hey, daddy's home. Daddy's home. And I still was getting home at 8 o'clock at night. But same thing. You were in town the whole time doing
Right.
your thing, but you never saw
I
them.
never saw my kids. And that was one of the highlights when I went to my wife and said, "Hey, Chris of Jay Christopher's has actually asked me to come partner in the next 5 that he opens, if not more." And she said, "No, I don't see that happening." I'm like, "Yeah." So being able to be home, being able to go to see you at tennis matches, when that was not too long ago, but
Right.
I was never able to do that before. I was never able to go watch them do things after school because my schedule was pretty much, I had to be at the fish market.
So this is that work-life balance thing that we don't talk about a lot on this podcast, but I love talking about this concept. Everybody thinks work-life balance, and immediately, especially if they're millennials, it's 50-50. I'm like, no, it never has been 50-50. If you really break it down, it's never 50-50. You got to find a work-life balance. And guess what? Work usually, if you're going to try to be productive and successful, is going to be a lot more than 50.
Absolutely.
And so when I was in corporate America, I used to joke I was Mr. Third Inning. I would never be at a baseball game or a softball game until the third inning if I was lucky. And when I started my business, I took over. I started, I coached baseball. I was an assistant coach on softball. I coached them in CMLA basketball. And then they were playing tennis. I was actually able to make the tennis matches. And that's where we met. Barry and I met when in high school when our girls were playing together. And everybody goes, "Wow, must be awesome. Oh, look at you." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I just got off the golf course and, I came here and then I'm going to go home and have a scotch and go to bed. Or I'm going to go home and work from 9 to 1 and catch up on everything I did." But my time was my own and I was cool with it. I mean, you got to embrace that. I think that part's awesome.
I worked kind of the same hours you did when I was in the corporate world. I mean, it was essentially an 11-hour day on average. And I felt lucky because many of the guys in my neighborhood were the ones that hopped on a plane on Monday morning and they got back Thursday evening. So at least there was a chance I was home, or if there was a major event, I could go. That's just crazy.
Yeah, I got to sleep in my own bed, which is
Right.
nice.
Yeah. But you go back to it. But how often did I feel guilty? Again, the Catholic guilt reaps in when I would leave early to go to make it by the third inning. I'd be walking
You
out.
should feel a lot more guilty for a lot more things, Chris, by the way.
Well, there's plenty to feel guilty about it, but that's not between you and me, Alan, buddy. All right. All right. So you go into partnership with these guys. They give you this promise. Obviously, you must have trusted them enough to go into this. How did you have to shift gears? Because what I find interesting, I'm not in the restaurant business, but I have heard from others, is that there's a lot of different verticals. There's a lot of different spaces, and you were in the high end. I don't know what they call it, but it's the high end. And we've talked about this, but Chops is like the gold standard for steakhouses in Atlanta.
Mhm.
Pick the one you want to think of, whoever it is. That is it. And so then you went to breakfast and lunch. So how did you
I think it's like driving a car, right?
yeah.
So you get into a old MGB, and the wheel turns the same way, the gas works sort of the same way, and everything else. When you get into a Ferrari, the wheel turns sort of the same way, a little sharper. The gas pedal's a little bit firmer. There's a lot more bells and whistles on it. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. The bells and whistles are different. So I think the concept's the same. It's all about
That's a great nugget. And I've got a great story.
The P&L's the same, right? There's controllables, there's labor, there's food costs. All of that stuff is the same. Employees, the same. Might be differently trained, have different. So Jay Christopher's, I will tell you that there's a handful of people we call like permanent waiters, right? That's what they're going to do the rest of their lives. Chops, place like that, 90% of them, that's what they do.
Career.
It's their career.
And they are so good at it.
Yeah,
but if you go into Jay Christopher's over in East Cobb on a Sunday, half the staff's probably Walton kids, high school kids, college kids that are at Georgia State or at Kennesaw State or up at our Woodstock.
And those
store.
are the people you're recruiting and
those
training.
Those are the kids that they're coming in there and training. So they're now. Do they smile differently than the people at Chops? No. Did they give you a little bit different service? Yes.
Higher turnover.
We are it's a different animal. Now, I will tell you that going from Chops, which is one of the elite restaurants, I would say in the whole country.
I agree.
Not just in Atlanta.
I mean, all offense to New York and LA
they
and
can
Vegas.
suck it.
Exactly. You know, I hate it. I love it when people say no offense, but, and they're about to just absolutely just lay you out. Right. So all offense, New York, LA, Vegas, Chops, it is, man. And I've been to a lot of them, and so have you, Alan. And it is.
I don't think I've been to as many as you lately.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But and
about to go in.
We're not. So breakfast and brunch wise, I consider, and a lot of people consider, Jay Christopher's kind of the upper tier of breakfast places. It's not. I love Waffle House. Walt Eamer, the CEO, is a great friend of mine. He's a phenomenal guy. What they do is unbelievable.
That's a great niche they serve with they have a great brand.
It's phenomenal.
Everything is awesome.
What they do.
But Jay Christopher's is a different different experience.
You look at their pricing's not a lot different once you put everything together, but it's just how it's presented. I think the presentation's a little bit different. The service is definitely different because we touch tables a lot more at Jay Christopher's than a lot of other fast service, or we consider ourselves full service, not we don't do counter service where you come up, place your order, and then go sit down, and then somebody just brings it to you.
Okay.
It's a full service restaurant. So
it is.
We have to train everybody the same way. I just had to adjust my expectations of everybody I dealt with, from the food purveyors all the way down to my dishwashers that I hired.
So I don't know Barry as well as I think I do, but I'm going to put me on him. That must have been really freaking hard because I would have been pissed. Wait, you're a full-time, your whole job is to be a great waiter. And now I'm getting kids from high school, and I would have lost my mind. So how did you adapt and react to it?
It's interesting because at Chops, we always said the waiters pretty much ran that restaurant. The managers just sat back. They did the schedule, everything else, but the waiters were the ones that kept all the other waiters in line, because, hey, you screw up your table, guess what? They might not come back and do it and take care of me
on my table.
Right. Or sales is going to go down. Jay Christopher's a little bit different. I still try to instill that kind of values into my staff that, hey, you never know. You've got to take care of everybody. You've got to give them the level of service. The problem is I can't expect that level of service out of the staff that we get at J. Christopher's 100% of the time, unfortunately. So it's a lot more customer service on my part and the manager's part,
Right.
making sure we're taking care of the tables.
All right. So now you're a part owner in 5 restaurants. That's what, but you've said you do the customer service that, but day-to-day operational P&L, where you're responsible, these 5 restaurants
I will tell you, the last 2 years, I've never worked harder.
And this is where I wanted to
So
go.
I've gone, you've been
on the entrepreneurial journey, in and out for a couple of years, but we established that you did cabin from 93 to 95 to 03. So you're on your own with a partner, and then you went back. Okay. But now you've been on your own for, again, for 17 years. He's been in the restaurant business since he was 14, and I can't wait to drop this one. So he told me this on the way here. He was saying, the hardest 2 years I've had in my life have been the last 2. And now I want to hear this. All right. The hardest 2. Why in the hell, after all this, you've done everything, you've networked everybody, everybody, you know how to run businesses, you know how to run restaurants, you're on top of the world. I hear you on the radio here. He is a mega success. Everybody knows who Barry Lennon is. And you said the last 2 years are the hardest. And this is for everybody who's listening. Guess what? It just doesn't get easier.
It doesn't. Staffing's a nightmare. So for anybody out there that's trying to start their own business, number one, you got to know your surroundings. You got to know your community. You got to know where to find these people. But even with that, I never know where I'm going to be on a day-to-day. I might say I'm going to be at one store, and then, for instance, Monday after, so it was July 2nd. I was due to work at my Midtown store. I was going to take my daughter Charlotte, who was home from college. She was going to be the only server. Me, the manager, and a server at Midtown location. We should have probably had a host and 4 servers minimal that day. Well, Brookhaven, I get a call from Brookhaven, the only server they have because we're short-staffed, calls out sick. So I send Charlotte to Brookhaven. So Charlotte works by herself with the manager, my 21-year-old daughter. And I work with the manager at Midtown, no servers, just her and I running the whole shift. I like getting my hands dirty.
That's insane.
But that's a little too much. Yeah, it's nuts.
Is there another word that you could put behind
no,
it?
It is all the tips.
There's a million.
All these tips come in, but there was nowhere to put them because it was the manager and me. So it went back into the house because I don't take tips, and my manager doesn't take tips. Whereas my daughter
that's
walked.
another one between me and God there, Ellen.
Yeah.
My daughter
wouldn't have
walked
been as good as Barry.
$500 that day.
Let's
for
go,
J.
baby
Christopher
doll.
server.
How about
That's
that for a
pretty
little
darn
work?
good.
Are you kidding me? It's good for anybody. $500 a day.
Yeah.
Barry, where did everybody go? They can't all be Amazon delivery drivers.
Well,
where are they?
Perfect example. My manager at my Buckhead store, her son at the age of 15 came to wash dishes for us, making $10 an hour. Good starter wage for a 15-year-old that had never worked anywhere, right? He works for us for a year. COVID hits. He gets hired for $14 an hour working in a warehouse, stacking stuff. So what would you do? Wash dishes for 10 or go work in a warehouse for 14?
Having washed dishes and completely hate it, and that's why I cook in my family, is so that everybody else can wash the dishes. That's my barter.
Yeah, we have the same deal.
Yeah, right.
I can tell when my wife doesn't like the meal I cook because she doesn't say anything. Just the dishes are still sitting there.
Oh,
yeah.
You know what? I know. Total aside, and we got to do this. I know when I don't cook a good meal, the hot sauce comes out, and it comes out in spades.
That's funny. Now, I'm not saying I cooked a bad meal. It's just she didn't like it. Like if I go a little Southern, or if I throw a little barbecue on there, she just.
I am so sorry there.
Yeah.
What do you right now? Are you doing Gordon Ramsay on me? I
Yeah.
mean, Jesus Christ. But you might be that good. All right. Okay. Maybe you're that good. I don't know. Sometimes I cook some shit meals. I don't know. That's what I do.
Yeah.
All right.
That's too bad for your family.
Can we go back to Barry?
I guess so.
Not your cooking.
We can talk about his big green egg. No, but we were talking about where did people go? I mean,
I think we're slowly starting to see people come back because businesses are going through. They say we're not in a recession yet. That's crazy. I know we are because businesses are starting to close. People are laying off. You hear stories in the news where people are laying off. And we're slowly getting people to come back to the industry.
And I believe your industry is probably the last to see people coming back,
and because we're the
lowest common
I hate to say
denominator.
we're the lower end of what, people say, well, I'm going to be a waiter for a part-time and then I'm going to go do something else. And they wind up staying for a long time because they are good at it. And they do a good job at it.
And it's got to be brutal for you, because we started this whole conversation with the difference between a restaurant that makes it and one that doesn't is the quality of the service, not so much the food. How are you going to do that with one person covering
and it
50
is.
tables?
And I will tell you, for the first little while, customers were pretty nice and saying, we understand. We're going to let. Now they're kind of done with that.
Yeah.
I hear that in a big way, because I think that's some bullshit. I've heard it, and he's not swearing it, but I will. That's exactly right. I just actually played out a scenario for a friend of mine. He's like, well, I'm sure people understand that you can't get the materials. I'm like, okay. He says, oh, by the way, I need some work done on my house. I'm like, oh, you know what you want done? I can't get that for another month. He goes, well, that's crap. I'll find somebody else. I said, see, you just did it to me. I said, look, brother, right? I'm in the business. And so people are not. And so again, if you're listening to this podcast and you're going out there and having a restaurant meal, man, slow the frick down and take care of your.
But it is tough as a consumer, because everybody tried to be, okay, let's go out and eat, when we can during COVID, let's support our local restaurants. We're going to, over tip the servers and that kind of thing, just to say thank you.
Right. To be part of the team.
Yeah. And
America
then
first.
All of a sudden, supply chain, blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, your portions have decreased, the price has increased, and then you don't have anybody serving you. It's a bit of a pill to swallow as a consumer. It's got to be a real challenge.
Well, I think one of the things that people don't understand too, I think a lot of people think that since we're big buyers, that we get better supply than you do at the grocery store, things like that. We get better pricing. We don't. I will tell you, when I get a phone call saying that there's no Canadian bacon, I'm like, what? Turkey. I can't get sliced turkey? Wait, we go through hundreds of cases. What do you mean we can't get it? Where is it?
You've mentioned that. You've been in the business since you were 14, which of course was just 4 or 5 years ago.
Exactly.
I'm not going to say you're ancient, but is this the first time you've ever seen a real supply chain?
It's nuts. Now I've seen prices fluctuate with the bird flu, and especially with eggs and things like that. Butter go up, milk go up, things like that. But it's everywhere, and it's diesel fuel and the lack thereof, or the price thereof. Lack of drivers, it just causes this huge strain. Back when COVID was prevalent and they were shutting factories down, it was horrific. There were things I would just look at people and go, I can't get it. I know that's our signature, but we can't get the item.
Back to people understand, right? And so I'm in the business, and COVID hit my business, and we've talked about my pivot and how I worked, and it only took me 2 months, and God bless Governor Kemp, because he absolutely got us out of this, and I started rock and roll. And I said, man, I'm finally in the right business. I can do this. I mean, we're cranking. And next thing you know, I can't find anybody to work. Then I can't get cabinets, and then I can't get this, and I can't get you pick it. I couldn't find it. It was just like this crazy crap. And then on Mother's Day, we went and we placed a to-go order at another restaurant, now Jake Christopher's, because it was dinner. And they said, I'm sorry, we're out. We're out of what? We're out of containers. We don't have any more containers.
Right.
You're like, do what? I said, well, I'll come down there and bring my own Tupperware. I told them, I'm like, hey, guys, I completely understand. And I was doing the I completely understand thing with the hands in the air, the whole thing. They ran out of containers. And Barry's just sitting there, blank stare. He's just like,
I called.
This is the kind of stuff that's mind blowing. You're like, I never thought I'd ever have to solve that problem.
I called Uline.
Yeah.
In Gainesville, Georgia, and ordered 50 cases of to-go bags because we couldn't get to-go bags through U.S. Foods here in Atlanta. I had to order them through them. There's so many times I've been in my truck driving from restaurant supply store to restaurant supply store looking for to-go boxes, to-go silverware. Still an issue, still hard to get.
How about that?
And getting whatever I can. That's not my normal container. I don't care. Give me whatever you got. And I don't care how much it costs, because we've got to have it.
Now, here's the cool thing. I'm actually doing a huge bathroom remodel right now for the guy who makes all the containers. And he lives here in Chamblee. and he makes them here in Chamblee.
No, we're done.
And yeah, so I'll hook you up after.
Thanks.
We'll tell you. But
So he's done well.
he has done well. He said, you know what his problem was? Again, the demand went through the roof, and he couldn't supply the demand. And he said people started buying whatever he was making. You know, he said he had, because again, manufacturing lines, you have to set up your dies, you could do all this stuff. You make them, and you make them based on the demand you think you're going to get and sell. And if in manufacturing you don't sell them, you lose money. Welcome to business, right? And he said, so I started setting up the other dies, and I would just make as many as I could. And next thing I know, people were buying, and I can't remember the story, but basically, if there are 12 eggs in a carton, he was making a 6-egg carton, and people are like, all right, I'll take 2 of those.
Jeez.
Whatever it was. He said, yeah. So he was sold out. All right. So that's the lesson. Even when you think you're on top and you're going to Vegas, hypothetically, maybe a week,
Several times a year.
Yeah. Actually, I'm going to go twice this.
I know.
That's
why I said that.
Oh, thank you. But the next time I'm going out there, just so I can talk to people, I'm going out there.
It's so that they go, hey, Mr. Lalamia, where have you been?
That's right.
The usual table.
Huh? I need the huge.
Yeah.
Give me the huge. Huh? Call me Frank. Can I be Frank? You can be anybody you want. But today we're doing this. All right. So back to Barry, shall we?
I think so.
Okay. Hardest 2 years, last 2 years. People, the pandemic, doing what you're doing just to keep the business going. You're starting to see some relief. Where do you think you guys are going to be in the next 2-3 years? What's kind of your plan?
Our plan is growth again. So
Growth again.
We're still looking. We're opening stores. We're going farther north, farther the outskirts around Atlanta, and I think that's where a lot of the growth is. You know, we just opened, and we've got one in Flowery Branch we've had for a while. MaitreD up in Gainesville. So we're going in those directions. We're going around. Really, my stores are around, you know, in Atlanta and Buckhead and in Brookhaven, but our meat and potatoes is really the neighborhoods. It's these neighborhoods. It's the mom and pop neighborhoods out in the suburbs.
So Warren Buffett said it, and we've talked about this on the podcast before. Bigger isn't better. Better is better. And so as you guys grow and expand, what are you guys thinking about are the challenges, or do you think you have the model that scales? And
I think our menu speaks for itself. I think everything is 90% of what we have is made from scratch. Recipes are phenomenal. We've done a great job. We do great specials. Again, staffing is the hard part. Staffing is the key. Staffing is really what we need to. We can build a building. It might take us a little bit longer these days to build a building because of the supply chain and everything else. Yep. But putting people in we opened a store in Canton over a year ago, and I think we're finally 70% staffed. That's the issue. It's staffing.
Wait,
and when you open a new restaurant,
I'm finally 70%.
But when you open a new restaurant in an area, it's not like me having my Buckhead store or my Midtown store that's been there for 11 years and my customer base knowing the consistency and quality and knowing that we're hurting. But when we open a new one up in Canton, and those people might not know the J. Christopher's brand because they've lived up in Canton, and all of a sudden they come in and they can't get the service they're used to, and then I'm responding to their emails and talking to them, that's our issue.
Yeah, that's your first impression. Right. And so do you think that not only you're going out into the growth areas because there's opportunity, but do you think that it's easier to find people in those tertiary markets?
Sometimes, because there's not, you're getting that. A lot of the places where we get our best staff are the East Cobb markets. These high school kids are there, and we're able to get, we're able to get a couple of good people during the week, but on the weekends is where we really need the bulk of our staff, and we can get these high school kids or these college kids. So that's why we like going to the burbs, because we can get that kind of staff from there.
Man, that's awesome. Again, if you're a consultant listening to this and going, you know what, I can solve Barry's staffing problem with my recruiting. Please don't call him. Because we've all heard it.
You won't reach me.
You won't reach me, because I love it when people say, you know what? I know your problem to staffing. Oh, do you? Right. Because I've only been doing my business for 14 years. And last year, I can't even give you my recruiting number that I had to put down just to get to where we are today, because we had the same problem. And now we're fully staffed. Actually, we're so fully staffed in January, which is historically our slowest month. And it's slow. I just had 2 guys say, hey, look, we're going to take 2 months off, but if you want to call me back in 2 months, I'm ready. I'm like, all right, I'm good. I haven't done that in probably 10 years. So this is crazy. Barry, this has been awesome. You've brought so much value to everybody who's listening because of what you've done and how you've done it. Even if you're not in Atlanta, just listen to what we were just talking about, because to lay down the best steak place you've ever been, just think of the best meal you've ever had in your life. This guy has done it. This guy has done it, and not only done it once, he has done it in spades. He's done it many times over. And now he's doing it in the breakfast and lunch concept. And it's so hard to be in restaurants. We've talked about this in other podcasts. Restaurants, brother, you can have it. I love cooking, and I don't ever want to ever do spoil it.
No, it would take all the fun out of it.
It would take all the fun out of it. And I
do
did
have
not
one more
like,
question.
oh, I knew he wanted to go.
I gotta ask.
Go
What's your
ahead.
favorite thing to do on the Big Green Egg?
I did a tomahawk ribeye, 3.75 pounds. So it was so big that the bone sticks out the side of the egg. So I sear it openly when I first start. And then the last time I did it, I actually took a reciprocating saw and cut the bone. I just wanted to get pictures of the bone coming off, and then
Our tools and meat and smoke.
Then I did my reciprocating saw.
I can't talk.
I'm actually
And
having a moment. I'm
cut
having
the
a moment.
bone, laid it down in there, and then you turn it down and let it slow. That, and then I'll give you one other great recipe because it's got a little kickback. But the Homestead, which is a resort in Hot Springs, Virginia, which my grandfather was the president of, I've got a cookbook, and every Christmas I do this tenderloin, but I don't do it on the egg. I wrap it. I put peppercorns on it. I put fat back on it, and then I sear overnight, and then I sear it. And then from the outside to the inside is a perfect, I don't know if you saw my pictures but it's the perfect rare to medium rare. And then I do this Armagnac peppercorn sauce that's just out of this world. So maybe one of these days we can do one of these, and we'll cook something and have a little food.
Barry's going to need to get a restraining order on
But
us.
I do.
Oh
That's
my
one of the
God,
things. I am in the
I'm crying right now,
breakfast
it's
and lunch
beautiful.
business, but I'm a carnivore. I love my meat. Sorry, that came across the wrong way, but I do love to rub my meat. So sorry about that.
And I'm having a moment too, because I can't say this either, but I love Barry's meat.
Yeah. You'd love Barry to rub your meat.
Oh my God.
I get it.
I've seen his cooking, and I'm telling you, I've looked at it. I saw the sauce he's talking about. I did not realize it was
Armagnac
Homestead.
sauce. I don't even know what that is.
Right.
So-
Well, we'll talk about this offline. Everybody, you know what? If you're interested, you can always email me, Chris@thetrustedtoolbox.com.
I'll send you the recipe.
And we'll send you the recipe. But don't bother Barry, because Barry's out there serving it, making it happen. Barry, thank you so much for coming on. I would tell people,
really appreciate it.
how would people get a hold of you? But we'll go ahead and put that in the show notes. So we don't want to inundate you, because a lot of our folks, as Alan mentioned, are nationwide. But if you're in Atlanta, you got to check out Jay Christopher's. Just go see what he's talking about, because he brought this concept. So it was started by two other guys, great recipes, but the service quality that I've seen that Barry brought to the table was amazing. And that's where I think that they've elevated their game. So thanks again for doing it, but I'm not going to let you go until I ask the last three questions.
Mhm.
And I have to do this.
You do.
What's your favorite feature of your house that's not the green egg?
I'm good with that answer.
I love my gas stove.
Really?
I do.
He's a cook through and through, bro.
I really enjoy temperature on, temperature off. I
Mhm.
love my gas stove.
What do you think
Love it.
about induction?
We've started using those actually in some of the Jay Christopher's, because it cuts down on the heat in the kitchen. It's done
Yeah.
a really, really good job. You just have to be really careful on those tops. The cooktops can crack really easily, and they can break, and
Have you
they
cooked
don't last
induction?
as long.
I've been in a kitchen where they were cooking on induction.
So I got to go to my buddy's place in Durango, and he let me cook for a while, and because we both love cooking as well. And those induction things, it was just completely weirding me out, because I wasn't used to it. But man, once I got used to it, I got them down, but it was hard in the
You have to
beginning.
have special pans too. With
Right.
with
He had the
thicker
special
lava.
pans, right? But I just was so
It's
not used
crazy
to it.
that once you take it off, you can put your hand right on it. Yeah, you
I
can't.
know.
burn.
All right. Favorite feature. You knew the cook would say that, right? The guy the whole thing revolves around food. And again, he is not 700 pounds. So this is not my 600-pound.
I know. If
weight
I
loss
was him,
program.
they'd have to push me in a wheelbarrow.
Right.
All right.
All right. Number two. Oh, this is going to be so hard.
Yeah.
What is a customer service pet peeve of yours?
So
when you're the customer,
when I'm the customer,
Oh boy. And he has
so
been
in
on a
my
lot of customer
thought,
service
look at the eye
cases.
contact.
in
he's
my
giving me
thought,
right
the customer's always right. The problem is with a lot of the people, the customer's not always right.
there. Mm-mm.
That's my issue. And I'm not a pain in the rear end normally. Things I ask when I go out, normally I'll shut my mouth, or my wife will look at me and go, just lighten up. It's not,
You know what? He gave a great answer, because I'm going to actually tell him in my company, I say the customer's first. The customer's not always right, because a lot of times, especially when you go into
I
home
actually like
repairs,
that, Chris.
you put the customer first. A lot of times they're going to ask you, hey, can't you just cut both sides of those door jambs and put this door in the wrong way? No, the best way to do this is this. So we always give options. So we say to put the customer first and do right by the customer.
Can I use that?
Do that.
I will. Thank you.
Oh, he can steal. So that's a big thing for me. And that's, which is hard, because in homes, we're in a very gray world. When you're out there having a meal, you either like the food or don't like the food. All right. That's a subjective thing. I can't tell you that you didn't like hot sauce on every single thing that I just presented to you.
Nicole.
Nicole, Austin, Sydney, and I may never cook for you again, family. But that's a different story. All right. So that's a whole different podcast. And that's the one where we're going to bring in the therapist.
Yeah, I was just
yet
going to say that sounds about time for the therapist on that. one.
Actually, we've been on hiatus because we went over the holidays and I haven't been around. I get a lot of stuff to get out. But anyway, back to Barry, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's.
Number 3, our favorite story. What is a DIY nightmare story in your house?
Well, I have sweat pipe before.
Nice.
I did build a 6,000-foot circular deck on the back of my house.
Nice.
But that's not my biggest nightmare. My wife hired a dad and his son to renovate our bathroom, $40,000 renovation, and they quit 70% into the job.
And you paid them how much of the job?
100% of the job. My wife did accidentally, well, not accidentally, but so
we know the story.
So I did the molding. I did the triple crown molding. I subcontracted everything out, from plumbing to tile. I did all of the lattice. I did all of the trim, triple crown molding all throughout the bathroom. I put all that in myself in my free time that I wasn't at the restaurant.
I'm glad you have a lot of free time.
That job went from
that part
3 months to 5 months,
and 40,000 to 60,000.
Yes. Yeah. And I had to do it. So the good news is, every time I take a shower, I look up at my triple crown molding and go, I did that.
I do love our shower though. It is a freaking awesome shower.
And that's where your bathroom should always be. That should be the place to go. Go relax, go recharge, go do that. And again, if you're thinking about a bathroom in Atlanta, you always call me. But anyway,
I should have.
We'll take care of that. Barry, this has been awesome. We brought a restaurateur to the table. And by the way, this is one of the best restaurateurs you will ever hear.
Thank you.
And this is awesome. So again, thank you again, everybody. Go out there, keep going up that mountaintop to success. Go make it happen. Whatever it is, just keep doing it. Solve a problem, pivot, make it happen. Be proactive, keep doing it. Let's go make it happen. We're out of here. Let's go.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.